The wind arrives before light. It moves low along the ground, passing between stones set long ago to mark fields and paths. Dust lifts, settles, lifts again. Olive trees answer with a dry murmur, leaves turning their pale undersides toward the coming day. The land of Ibelin does not wake suddenly. It opens itself in stages, releasing cold from stone, warmth from soil, memory from every surface shaped by repeated use. Roads lie quiet, their curves already decided, their destinations unchanged by the passing of seasons. Nothing here waits for command. Everything waits for attention. Balian enters this morning as he often does, without ceremony. He is already in motion when the sky begins to thin. His steps follow the inner route between the estate's central buildings and the outer fields, a path traced so often that it requires no thought. His cloak hangs heavy from use, its edges worn smooth. He carries no emblem beyond what custom requires. The horse behind him is tethered, patient, accustomed to pauses of uncertain length. Balian walks instead, testing the ground with his weight, feeling where winter rains have softened it too much, where last year's repairs have held. He does not consider himself a figure apart from this place. The lordship is not an extension of desire, but a condition already in motion when he assumed its weight. Authority here is inherited in fragments, obligations left unfinished, arrangements made under different pressures, expectations formed by habit rather than decree. He senses this before he names it. Responsibility arrives ahead of intention. It presses first on the hands, then on the judgment. Ambition, if it appears at all, follows at a distance. The estate reveals itself through systems rather than scenes. Roads determine which fields survive drought. Storage rooms decide which households endure winter without debt. Market schedules govern trust more effectively than threats. Balian's attention moves along these lines, not as a strategist but as a caretaker trained by repetition. He stops where a boundary stone leans inward, nudges it back into place with his boot, then bends to check its base. The act is small. It matters. Lines kept clear prevent arguments that later demand force. As the day advances, movement increases. Laborers arrive in groups, tools balanced across shoulders. Carts follow the road at uneven intervals, wheels finding the same grooves cut years earlier. Balian observes without interruption. He notes patterns rather than individuals. A delay here. An absence there. Systems speak through irregularity. When he reaches the outer holdings, the land opens wider, less contained by walls. Here disorder does not announce itself loudly. It grows in the margins where oversight weakens. A dispute has formed over water access along a shared channel. It has not yet hardened into accusation. That is its danger. Balian approaches without summons, standing where the channel narrows. He watches the flow. He waits for the hour when usage increases. Pressure reveals truth. He does not rush to judgment. Restraint becomes the decision itself. To act too soon would fix error into rule. By late afternoon, he signals for a temporary adjustment, not a verdict, a pause. Water is divided by time rather than claim. The solution is imperfect. It holds. Precedent begins as compromise before it becomes structure. Balian accepts the cost of dissatisfaction now to avoid fracture later. Authority here is measured by what it refuses to do. Evening returns the land to quiet. Stone cools. The road darkens in its shallow dips. Balian walks the same path back, slower now, the weight of the day settled into his shoulders. He thinks not of triumph or failure but of continuity. The estate breathes because someone attends to its rhythm. When he reaches the gate, the wind rises once more, passing through the olive trees as it did at dawn, indifferent to names, faithful only to endurance. The season turns without signal. Days lengthen, then pause, then lengthen again. Rain retreats into memory, leaving behind channels etched deeper into the soil. Stone absorbs heat and gives it back slowly, long after the sun has lowered. The road outside Ibelin bears more traffic now, not because of command, but because habit has resumed its hold. Movement returns where certainty allows it. Silence shortens, the land adjusts, Balian's days settle into a pattern that resists display. He rises before others, not from discipline alone but because the quiet hours offer clarity. He walks the same circuits, yet each passage reveals difference. A cracked wall repaired too quickly. A tool left where it should not be. Signs of haste trouble him more than signs of neglect. Neglect can be corrected. Haste corrodes judgment. His role is no longer limited to presence. Requests find him without being sought. They arrive folded into routine tasks, carried by stewards, conveyed by gesture rather than insistence. A storage tally does not align with last season's yield. A labor group requests reassignment after injury thins its number. These are not crises. They are weight-bearing points. If left unattended, they shift the structure. He listens more than he speaks. Not because he lacks authority, but because authority exercised too early distorts information. He allows accounts to unfold fully, even when repetition strains patience. Truth here is cumulative. It forms from overlap, from the same detail appearing in different mouths, altered only by emphasis. He begins to see where responsibility concentrates, where it disperses. The estate teaches him its internal logic. Justice here is not abstract, it is timed. Delayed decisions produce resentment. Swift decisions risk error. Balance is learned, not declared. Balian adjusts schedules rather than issuing warnings. He reorders duties instead of assigning blame. Power moves sideways before it moves downward. When correction occurs, it feels almost incidental. A threat emerges not as violence but as erosion. Trade routes shift slightly south. Merchants linger less. Coin circulates more slowly. The change is subtle enough to be dismissed. Balian does not dismiss it. He walks the road himself, noting where repairs lag, where shade no longer falls at midday. Infrastructure speaks through fatigue. He authorizes maintenance not as improvement but as preservation. Stability must be visible to be trusted. Pressure gathers at the margins. A small group of retainers urges firmer measures, stricter levies, sharper enforcement. Their concern is not unfounded. Balian weighs it without yielding. He knows force compels quickly and decays faster. Restraint costs more at first. It demands explanation. It demands presence. He chooses it again. Rules begin to form without proclamation. Water access is logged by season. Storage allocations are fixed by household size rather than favor. Disputes are heard at predictable intervals. Method replaces impulse. Precedent settles into expectation. The estate responds by smoothing its own movement. Less energy is spent resisting decision. More is spent working, yet the cost registers. Balian feels it in the evening when his steps slow and his thoughts linger on what was left undone. Leadership here offers no release. It accumulates quietly, like heat held in stone. As dusk returns and the wind traces the same paths it always has, he understands that continuity is not maintained by strength alone, but by attention sustained beyond comfort. Summer arrives without ceremony. Heat settles into the land and stays, pressing itself into stone and soil alike. Dust rises with each passing step and hangs briefly before falling back into place. The wind grows thinner, less willing to carry away what gathers. Work continues in shorter spans, measured against the sun rather than the clock of obligation. The estate does not pause, it adapts. Balian moves through these days with greater deliberation. Responsibility now precedes every action. He does not seek to enlarge his reach, only to keep it from slipping. Each morning he receives reports that mirror one another in form but not in consequence. A boundary stone displaced by flooding. A granary door left unsealed. A dispute between tenants over shared labor. None stand alone. Together they form a pattern of strain. He begins to sense where ambition hides within necessity. Expansion tempts quietly, presented as efficiency, as improvement. He resists it. The land does not require more order. It requires steadiness. He delays projects that promise visible gain but threaten imbalance. Roads are repaired before new paths are cut. Storage is reinforced before yields are increased. Responsibility narrows his choices. It clarifies them. Markets respond first. Predictability draws them back. Traders return with measured confidence, testing the estate's reliability before committing fully. Balian watches the exchange points, noting where trust gathers. He adjusts oversight not by presence alone but by system. Weights are standardized. Measures are marked. Disputes are resolved quickly and without display. Justice becomes routine. Routine becomes security. Disorder surfaces briefly, then recedes. A group of laborers withholds work in protest of reassigned duties. The tension remains contained, its edges blunt rather than sharp. Balian meets it without urgency. He traces the cause through schedules and supply, not through blame. The correction is quiet. Tasks are redistributed. Compensation is clarified. The work resumes. Authority holds because it does not need to assert itself. The pressure of decision weighs more heavily now. Each choice excludes others. Balian feels the narrowing of possibility, the gradual enclosure that leadership brings. He chooses restraint again, not as principle but as habit. Force would have ended the dispute faster. It would have left residue. He accepts the slower path, knowing it demands more of him. Structure solidifies through repetition. Rules are no longer questioned. They are referenced. The estate begins to govern itself in small ways. Stewards anticipate needs. Laborers adjust without instruction. The system breathes, expanding and contracting with the season. Balian observes this with a distance he did not possess before. He is less visible. His influence persists. The cost deepens. Fatigue settles into his body, not as weakness but as constant presence. Sleep shortens, thought stretches longer, yet the land holds. As evening shadows lengthen across the fields and the wind stirs dust into brief motion, he understands that growth sustained by stability leaves fewer marks, but endures longer. Autumn moves in slowly, announced first by the change in light. The sun lowers its path, and shadows lengthen across the estate before the day is done. The wind returns with purpose, lifting dust from the roads and carrying the scent of drying grain. Fields shift in color, green thinning into muted gold. The land prepares without instruction. It has done this before. Balian notices the rhythm before he names it. Work begins earlier. It ends sooner. The estate adjusts its breath to the season. He walks the roads at dawn, boots marking the same paths taken by carts and animals. The stones remember weight. They hold the shape of passage. His movement is ordinary. He stops where carts slow, where ruts deepen. He listens to the ground through his feet. Responsibility is no longer something he steps into. It surrounds him. He cannot move without touching it. Ambition offers itself quietly, disguised as foresight. If more grain were stored, losses could be reduced. If additional labor were compelled, repairs could be finished before rain. He recognizes the pull. He does not answer it. The estate is not a thing to be driven. It is a balance to be kept. Systems reveal themselves most clearly under strain. Markets tighten as surplus shrinks. Prices lift, not sharply but enough to be felt. Balian watches transactions from a distance. He tracks not profit but behavior. Where fear enters, disorder follows. Justice becomes heavier work in this season. Disputes arise over storage space, over access to mills, over obligations postponed during harvest. Each case is small, together they press. He insists on consistency. Decisions echo one another. Fairness is not explained, it is demonstrated repeatedly. The road network takes on new importance. Mud forms where stone is weak, carts stall, labor backs up behind them. Balian orders repairs that will not be seen once the rains begin. The work is uncelebrated, it matters more than walls. Threat arrives without banner. Banditry flickers at the margins, testing response rather than strength. A stolen animal, a cart lightened of goods. The incidents are contained but not ignored. He increases patrols along roads, not fields. Movement must remain safe. He chooses restraint again. No sweeping punishment, no display. Those caught are returned to labor under watch. Order is restored without spectacle. The message spreads without words. Institution follows choice. Patrol schedules are fixed. Responsibilities assigned by route rather than by rank. The system becomes predictable. Predictability becomes protection. Stability allows for measured expansion. A new granary wing is approved, built where stone already lies. No new land is claimed. What exists is strengthened. The estate grows inward. The cost of this approach settles on him. Days lengthen, decisions accumulate. He carries each one longer than before. There is no release. Only continuation. Loss appears quietly. An aging steward fails to rise one morning. Work pauses, then resumes. Replacement is chosen from within. The system absorbs the absence. Balian feels it more sharply than he allows himself to show. He begins to see the estate as something that will outlast him. The thought is not comfort, it is weight. What he sets in place will remain. As winter approaches, preparations tighten. Firewood is counted, roofs inspected, grain sealed. These acts repeat older ones but with greater care. Experience sharpens attention. The wind grows colder. It moves through the roads and fields, touching everything equally. Balian stands at the edge of the market one evening, watching merchants pack away their goods. Order persists without his hand. Responsibility has reshaped him. He moves less. He sees more. Authority now lives in absence as much as presence. The estate rests not because danger has passed, but because it is understood. Stability is not stillness. It is readiness. Stone holds the day's warmth into night. Roads darken but remain passable. Systems endure. Leadership leaves marks that are not visible from a distance. They are felt underfoot. Winter settles without drama. Rain replaces dust and the roads darken under repeated passage. Water gathers in low places, testing the stone laid months before. Some holds, some gives. The land answers only to what has already been done. Balian moves more slowly now, not from age but from caution. Cold sharpens attention. Breath becomes visible, each step measured against balance rather than speed. Cloaks are pulled tighter. Work continues in narrower hours. Responsibility shifts in winter. Growth pauses. Preservation takes its place. He walks the storage buildings, checking seals, counting sacks, listening for the sound of rodents in the walls. Loss here would be silent and complete. He does not permit it. Ambition has no place in this season. The land offers no invitation. What matters is holding. He resists proposals for forced labor or ration reduction. Short-term gain would fracture trust. Trust is the reserve that matters. Markets contract but do not vanish. Trade becomes necessity-driven, stripped of excess. Prices stabilize under oversight. Weights and measures are checked more often. Fairness tightens rather than loosens. Justice grows heavier still. Hunger sharpens dispute. Accusations carry urgency. Balian hears them patiently. He delays decisions until verification arrives. Slowness becomes a form of care. Disorder presses closer in winter. Desperation travels farther than anger. Theft increases at the margins. He responds by strengthening watch rotations, pairing older guards with younger ones. Experience tempers force. A moral line is tested. One theft is answered with punishment that exceeds instruction. Balian intervenes. The penalty is reduced. The guard is reassigned. Authority asserts restraint, not weakness. Structure adjusts. Clear protocols are written and repeated. Punishments are scaled. Appeals allowed. The system gains texture. It learns from error. Stability deepens quietly. Families remain through the cold months. No flight, no abandonment. Fires burn each night across the estate, visible markers of endurance. The cost accumulates in him. Sleep fractures. Decisions revisit him in the dark. Fatigue settles behind the eyes. He carries it without complaint. Loss returns. A child does not survive the cold. The estate cannot absorb this fully. Work slows for a day, then resumes. The system holds, but the weight remains. Balian feels the narrowing of his inner world. Personal life thins. Obligation fills the space. Leadership consumes what it sustains. He reflects on continuity without naming it. Others have held this land before. Others will after. His task is not permanence. It is alignment. As winter wanes, preparation begins again. Tools are repaired. Seed is set aside. The cycle insists. The wind shifts. It carries the promise of thaw. Roads soften. Stone reappears. The estate emerges intact, not unchanged but coherent. Authority has settled into habit. It no longer announces itself. Balian stands at the road's edge, watching carts resume their rhythm. Movement returns. Leadership is measured not by what advances but by what endures. Spring returns unevenly. Warmth comes in brief stretches, then withdraws, leaving the ground uncertain beneath the feet. Rain falls lightly, often, softening the soil without fully renewing it. The land hesitates. So does the work. Balian senses the change before it is visible. The estate shifts from preservation back toward motion, but the movement is cautious. Tools are taken out, then set aside again. Seeds are measured twice. Timing matters more than effort. He resumes longer walks, tracing the same roads that carried winter traffic. The stones show wear, polished by restraint rather than haste. Where water has weakened the edges, repairs are planned, not rushed. Responsibility now lies in anticipation. Ambition returns disguised as recovery. Voices suggest reclaiming lost ground, increasing output to compensate for lean months. Balian listens. He does not refuse outright. He delays. Expansion after strain invites fracture. Systems reveal their memory. Markets reopen gradually. Trust rebuilds where fairness held. Traders return with smaller loads, watching closely. Balian adjusts oversight to be visible again, not intrusive but present. Justice adapts to renewal. Old disputes resurface in altered form. Boundaries blurred by rain are redrawn. Labor obligations renegotiated. He insists on continuity. Precedent matters more now than ever. Threat appears differently in spring. Not theft, but impatience. Laborers push beyond agreed limits. Overseers urge speed. Mistakes follow. A collapsed storage rack. A miscounted allotment. Disorder grows from haste. Balian intervenes early. He slows the schedule. He redistributes labor to restrained groups. The correction costs time. It saves cohesion. A moral decision sharpens the season. One proposal promises immediate surplus through extended labor hours. It would strain families already thinned by winter. He refuses it. The refusal is final. Institution responds. Work hours are fixed, rest days enforced. Oversight is documented. What began as judgment becomes rule. Stability deepens again. Output increases modestly, steadily. No surge, no collapse. The estate finds its pace. The cost of leadership surfaces in quieter ways. Balian feels distance grow between himself and others. Familiarity has thinned into formality. Respect replaces ease. He accepts this without resistance. Authority has its price. It is paid daily. Loss echoes from earlier seasons. Empty places remain. New laborers fill roles, but memory lingers. The system carries both. He reflects on continuity more clearly now. The estate functions without his direct hand in many places. Stewards decide correctly. Markets regulate themselves. Roads remain passable. Succession enters thought without urgency. He begins assigning responsibility more deliberately, testing judgment, observing restraint. Transfer is gradual, not announced. The land responds, fields green evenly. The wind moves through growing grain, no longer carrying dust but promise restrained by care. He stands again at the road's edge as he has before. Movement continues, carts pass, labor flows. What has been expanded is not territory but structure, not power but reliability. The estate has grown inward, deepening its order. Balian understands now that leadership is not the act of shaping the future, but of aligning the present so that the future may arrive intact. The wind passes over stone and soil alike, indifferent to names. What endures is what has been set to last. Summer settles again, firmer this time, without the hesitations of spring. Heat stretches across the estate in long, unbroken days. The land no longer questions its direction. Growth is visible, steady, contained within the limits already drawn. Grain thickens. Olive trees hold their weight. Roads carry traffic without complaint. Balian feels the season as confirmation rather than reward. What was set in motion earlier now moves with less need for correction. Systems hold their shape under pressure. That is their test. He reduces his visible presence, not withdrawal but trust. Stewards manage schedules. Market officials resolve minor disputes without appeal. Guards adjust patrols according to pattern rather than command. Authority disperses. Responsibility, however, does not lighten. It changes form. Instead of choosing actions, he evaluates choices already made by others. Judgment shifts from initiation to calibration. Ambition appears again, this time from below. Successful management encourages confidence. Some seek wider latitude. More land, more autonomy, fewer checks. Balian listens carefully. He grants none outright. He responds institutionally. Boundaries are clarified in writing. Responsibilities are matched with accountability. Expansion is permitted only where structure already exists to sustain it. Threat emerges subtly. A neighboring lord tests influence through trade pressure, diverting routes, offering incentives to bypass Ibelin's markets. The challenge is economic, not martial. It requires patience. Balian counters by reinforcing reliability. Fees remain stable. Protection remains consistent. No retaliation. Traders notice the contrast. Routes return gradually. A moral decision presses him. He could undercut rivals aggressively. It would weaken them quickly. It would also destabilize the region. He declines. Stability outweighs advantage. Institution absorbs this choice. Agreements are renewed, trade standards published, neutrality becomes policy. Expansion follows but slowly. Market volume increases. Storage capacity fills. The estate's influence widens without proclamation. Others adjust around it. The cost becomes personal. Isolation deepens. Relationships narrow to function. Balian feels the thinning of informal bonds. Leadership has refined him into role. Fatigue resurfaces, quieter but persistent. The body remembers strain even when conditions improve. He accepts the limits of endurance. Reflection deepens. He sees the estate now as layered time, past decisions embedded in stone and routine, present effort shaping unseen futures. Succession becomes practical consideration. He identifies individuals who act with restraint. He observes how they respond to small authority. Preparation continues without announcement. The land reflects order. Harvest approaches without urgency. Labor moves efficiently. The wind carries sound of work, not alarm. Balian walks the roads less often now. When he does, he observes rather than intervenes. Systems speak for him. Authority has shifted fully from presence to structure. It no longer requires affirmation. As evening falls, heat releases its hold. Shadows stretch across fields that will soon be cut. The cycle advances. Leadership, he understands, is not the visible hand guiding motion, but the unseen framework that allows motion to continue without it. Autumn returns with familiarity rather than surprise. The air cools in measured steps, easing the heat without erasing it. Light softens. Fields move toward harvest without haste. The land carries the memory of earlier seasons, and it responds accordingly. Balian senses closure approaching, not as an ending but as completion of a phase. The estate now operates with a coherence he no longer needs to impose. Work proceeds according to pattern. Correction is rare. He resumes walking the perimeter, not to inspect but to witness. Boundaries hold. Roads remain clear. Markets function with little oversight. Authority has settled into place. Responsibility shifts again. His role narrows to stewardship of transition. He prepares others to bear weight, not by instruction but by example. Decisions are allowed to stand, even when imperfect. Internal cost surfaces in quiet acknowledgement. He feels the accumulation of years. Fatigue has become constant, not sharp. Loss has shaped his caution. Leadership has reduced him, not diminished, but refined. Reflection widens beyond himself. The estate appears as a living system, shaped by countless unseen hands. His contribution is one layer among many. Continuity matters more than memory. Succession advances through practice. Authority is shared deliberately. Records are maintained, procedures fixed. What can be transferred is, the land responds with indifference to names. Harvest proceeds. Grain fills storage. Roads carry weight. The cycle completes. Threat does not vanish. It is simply managed. Disorder is anticipated, not feared. Stability is now habit. Balian steps back further. His presence becomes occasional. The estate holds. The wind moves through cut fields, lifting chaff and carrying it away. Stone remains warm into evening. Markets close on time. What endures is not decision but structure, not power but alignment. Leadership passes not through declaration but through readiness. The season turns again as it always has. The land remains. Order persists where restraint has been practiced. Winter approaches with less resistance than before. The first cold nights arrive early, settling into stone and timber without protest. The land does not brace itself. It adjusts. Fires are lit. Doors are checked. Movement slows but does not stop. Balian feels the season as culmination rather than decline. The estate now carries itself through change with minimal direction. Systems respond before instruction arrives. Habit has replaced vigilance. He spends more time indoors, not from withdrawal but from necessity. Records occupy his attention. Tallies, schedules, precedents. He reads them not for control but for continuity. What is written must survive those who wrote it. Responsibility narrows to care of transition. He observes those who have assumed weight naturally. Decisions made without appeal. Corrections issued without resentment. Authority has found new vessels. The internal cost settles fully. Fatigue no longer flares, it rests. Loss no longer surprises. It has become part of the structure he carries. Leadership has taken its share. He walks the roads one final time before the rains deepen. Stone holds. Roots remain clear. Movement persists even in cold. He is a witness now, not an agent. Reflection comes without ceremony. The estate does not bear his name in every place, yet his influence remains in pattern and restraint. What mattered was never visibility. Succession is not announced. It is enacted quietly. Responsibilities pass hand to hand through practice. Authority transfers without disturbance. The system absorbs the change. The land responds as it always has. It does not mark transition. It continues. Winter settles fully. Snow touches higher ground briefly, then retreats. The estate holds warmth where preparation was careful. Fires burn evenly across dwellings. Balian steps back further. His presence becomes memory while still living. The work continues without him at its center. He understands now that continuity is not preservation of form, but of function. What endures adapts. The wind moves through bare branches and along empty roads. Stone remains. Markets rest. Leadership has dissolved into structure. Obligation has become routine. Spring returns after the long winter, bringing with it muted light and cautious warmth. The estate awakens slowly, grass pushing through soil softened by rain, olive trees swelling with sap. Roads dry in patches, then darken with fresh water. Movement returns naturally as it has for generations. The rhythm of labor, of life, continues without disruption. Balian observes from the tower, not with command but with attention. The work of months past is visible in every stone laid, every wall repaired, every furrow turned. The patterns of care and restraint endure, more enduring than the presence of any single hand. He watches carts travel the roads he once patrolled, merchants call prices set long before, and laborers execute tasks according to routines he helped shape. Responsibility has shifted fully. It rests now as much in systems as in individuals. His decisions are embedded in procedures, recorded in ledgers, marked by precedent. Ambition no longer drives action. Purpose has become continuity. The estate functions as a whole, coordinated without spectacle, disciplined without force. The internal cost of leadership is felt more sharply in quiet moments. He notices the thinning of familiar faces, the absence of friends lost to age or necessity. Fatigue persists beneath the surface, though outwardly he moves with the calm that years of duty have etched into his body. The burdens of authority are now intangible, carried in awareness rather than visible labor. He reflects on continuity beyond his own life. Those who follow will inherit more than land and goods. They inherit order, trust, and precedent. Authority has become a framework, not a person. Decisions have left their mark in enduring patterns rather than in stories of action or triumph. The estate will breathe without him, as it always has before any individual held it. Succession occurs without ceremony. Selected stewards take on responsibilities quietly, their actions guided by the systems Balian strengthened. Authority flows into new hands with no fanfare, no disruption, no display. What remains is stability. What remains is endurance. The roads, markets, walls, and granaries all testify to restraint over impulse, method over moment. Summer approaches, but the estate is prepared. Grain is stored, structures are sound, and labor is disciplined. The estate has grown inward, consolidating its strength, preserving its integrity. Balian walks once more through the olive groves, touching stone walls, observing the subtle work of repair and noting the rhythm of the harvest. He does not intervene. He only witnesses. Authority now resides in absence as much as presence. The wind passes over fields and stone alike, carrying dust and the faint scent of olive oil. The estate continues its work, unshaken by the changing seasons, unbroken by the passing of individual hands. Stability and order have taken root where careful oversight allowed them. As evening settles, sunlight drifts across the land, soft and deliberate. Shadows stretch long over roads, walls, and market stalls. Balian rests, aware that his labor has created endurance. Leadership is no longer action, it is preparation. Power is not displayed, it is embedded. And as the day closes, the estate stands ready to continue, a living system sustained by structure, care, and foresight.